Use your powers for evil.
Your evil is mine.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs. We're back. It's been a while since we've been reunited, but it feels so good as my partner in crime and my partner in time, Jesse Jackson, is back. Hello, Jesse.
Hello, Charles.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It was a nice vacation, and but you were in great hands with the lovely and talented Karen Lindsay.
Yes.
So I'm glad. I've listened to y'all's discussion and loved it. It was great. But something else happened while we were gone.
What would that be, Jesse?
Well, not only did you go to a great concert, and we're
Yes.
hoping to do a mini review of that for Set Listing Bruce.
Right, I figured, so yeah.
But some little sports event happened.
Oh, yeah. So, last Sunday, 1 week ago, the earth cracked open, the apocalypse came down, all hell broke loose, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, as somehow the universe went all timey-wimey, spacey-wacy, and the Cleveland Cavaliers actually brought the city of Cleveland a long, long, long awaited championship.
Yes, for those who don't know,
And I'm rocking my gear.
Yes, he is. Charles usually, since this is an audio podcast, our
Yes.
dear listeners don't know, but Charles usually has a kind of themed Doctor Who T-shirt for whatever we're recording.
Generally, or at least then generally Doctor Who related.
Yes. And so it was. He was so proud to show me.
I'm breaking
that.
tradition.
That was so. I'm so happy for you. And friend of the podcast, designer of our logo, Tom Zoller, is another Ohio resident, and he's happy. And so, well done. And I'm even guessing LeBron's a Doctor Who fan.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope if he knows what's good for him. But
absolutely.
But this has been such a long-waited thing in my life because, as you know, there has never been a championship in Cleveland in my lifetime.
Right.
The last time we won the championship was 52 years ago. I'm not 52.
No.
So I've literally been waiting all my life for this.
Yes.
And it finally happened, and I was so glad that I got to share this experience with my father because I don't know how much time we have left. So this was the first time that we were able to have this as father and son. So that meant a lot to me. I was hoping that this would happen, God forbid, before he passed. And thankfully it did. So that alone was worth it for me.
Charles, and we're going to get to Doctor Who, I promise, in just a couple of minutes, listener.
Yes.
But
yeah. Sorry.
No. I have the same experience because, Chris is currently 27. He was born in 89. So he was really too young to enjoy the cowboy, Super Bowl years.
Right. And I remember watching that as a kid. So yeah.
Yeah. So, but we sat through the disappointing Rangers, World Series losses, but he and I shared the Mavericks victory, which you were cheering from afar because it was
Yes.
at the time he hated LeBron.
Well, hey, he came back, he made his move, and he promised us a championship, and he delivered. So
Absolutely.
I have to give him his props. He followed through finally.
Yeah, and
better late than never. But
well, and we've talked a little bit about this in some of our.
But we definitely appreciate the support from.
Yeah, we did, and so Chris and I had that wonderful sharing of father and son, and he was in tears calling me. So I'm glad for you. I'm glad for your dad, and that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So okay.
Let's move on. Doctor Who, back in the TARDIS.
Doctor Who.
So this time we're going to talk about. We're going back to the Peter Davison era, my Doctor, with Planet of Fire. And this is the penultimate Peter Davison story. The next one after this, of course, is the Caves of Androzani, Davison's last. But this was a pretty notable episode, I think. Just to kind of give a general overview, this was written by Peter Grimwade, directed by Fiona Cumming, and it's the 5th serial from season 21, 1984. And we've got, in this episode, we get the return of Anthony Ainley as the Master, the third Master. We've got the second and last appearance of Chameleon, voiced by Gerald Flood, who played King John in The King's Demons, which was Chameleon's first out of 2 appearances, even though that was episode 13. So basically, we've got 2 whole Chameleon appearances within the span of 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, so 7 episodes, and only 2 Chameleon appearances, even though he's a companion in TARDIS, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we've got Peter Wyngarde as Timanoff, and Peter Wyngarde is an actor that you may remember if you're a fan of the movie Flash Gordon, starring Sam Jones. He played Clytus. So if you remember him, he was Ming the Merciless's little hench guy. He was, he was the guy who talks about the planet Earth. And what plaything shall we do? He goes, when Ming goes, Clytus, I'm bored. What plaything do you have for me today? And then he talks about, he's the guy in the Doctor Doom mask, and he's really cool. So that's him, and he's in this story. We've got Barbara Shelley, who plays Sarasta. She's notable. She was in a lot of Hammer horror films, particularly a Dracula film with Christopher Lee. So yeah, so that's kind of where she's notable from. But so she's in this as well. But so overall, Jesse, now I'll get back to you. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I just want to kind of give a little taste. No. So what was your initial thoughts on this story?
So this is, I think, only the second Peter Davison show we've watched together, correct?
Right. Yes.
Liked him a lot more this time.
Right.
Not that I didn't like him the last episode, but I liked him a lot in this one. And he is not a snarky, quipping doctor. I mean, he
can be, but
but the episodes you've got like today, this one not as much. But I really enjoyed the story a great deal. I have lots of questions.
I imagine you do,
because I recognized Peri, of course, and she.
I thought you'd appreciate the fact that this was Peri's first story.
I love that you gave me that, and I want to talk about that. And but at first I'm going, who's this ginger in the TARDIS?
Exactly.
Like what the heck?
Well, now you know why the Doctor's always upset, because he's not ginger, because of Turlough. Yeah. He always wanted to be ginger like Turlough, and then hasn't quite happened yet.
Yeah, and the robot and everything. It's like,
who are these guys?
Yeah, exactly? Who are these guys?
All right, so we'll run those down later.
But yeah, overall, a really good story. I think one of the things you have to understand as you're watching Classic Who is you fill time. So then I thought this was a good story, but you really could almost cut this down to 3 episodes.
Right.
But our format is 4.
Yeah.
So we're going to make it work.
Well, I should point out Fiona Cumming for the DVD release of
Yes.
Planet of Fire. There is actually a special director's cut version of Planet of Fire. It actually has some improved special effects.
Okay.
And it's formatted for widescreen as opposed to
nice.
the 4:3.
Okay.
And so it's a lot of that, like those scenes where they're walking across the surface of Sarn, those are definitely trimmed down.
Okay.
So the pacing's a lot better. So if you're interested, and you have the means, I recommend checking it out, because that's actually the version I watched this weekend. Because I knew the story, so I figured, well, I'll just watch the shorter version and with the better special effects.
Yeah, I got the original DVD from shout out to Ken Schaefer. He lent me his copy,
right?
And so I got to watch a little bit of behind the scenes, and the episode looks beautiful.
Right.
It's a crisp,
it's got cinematography.
Yeah, the cinematography is very clear, very well done. And like I said, I liked this Fifth Doctor even more. I thought this was really, he seemed a little more warm, and I liked him a lot.
Obviously this is Peter Davison's third and final season, so he's found his doctor by now.
Yes,
and he's much more comfortable than he was in the first season, because the last episode I believe that we discussed was Earthshock, which was Davison's 5th episode.
Okay,
and so this is much later in his run. Obviously, it's the episode right before his final story.
Right.
So yeah, he's definitely found his doctor by now.
Okay.
But so let's get into the more meat of the discussion. And one of the things I want to talk about was, first off the bat, we got the Fifth Doctor, of course. The Fifth Doctor versus the Third Master. So we've got Davison versus Anthony Ainley's character. And this is kind of one of the, as the various doctors and the various masters have gone on throughout Doctor Who's life, as a series. At first, we had like John Pertwee versus Roger Delgado, and that was kind of like a definitive Doctor versus Master. This is probably the second definitive Doctor versus Master. I mean, and it's probably now Anthony Ainley also faces the 6th Doctor and the 7th Doctor, but it doesn't nearly have as much impact as when he was facing off against Davison's Doctor.
Now, is this in the classic?
Yes,
episode?
in the classic.
Okay.
So I would say the third would probably be David Tennant and John Sim.
So I think
and the fourth is now Peter Capaldi and oh shoot, you know who I'm talking, Missy, of course. Michelle Gomez. Thank you.
So I think as we produce on the air, which we normally do, we should put that in the back of our brains to have a Doctor Master themed episode where we kind of discuss the different relationships, a lot of questions to ask you, and also talk about the modern current. Because I'm going to ask one question and then we'll move on.
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
I really, because what I want to ask you and is, were you as a Doctor Who, connoisseur, were you surprised or were you disappointed with the modern way the Master looked? Because it appeared, and that's why I said this might be better served in our later discussion, but it was a very the Master in these classic episodes looked very villainous.
Yeah, sinister.
Almost like the
Man in Black and
and the almost Errol Flynn versus the evil
Sir Guy of Gisborne and
that kind of they all had the kind of goatee and that kind of look. So
I would totally agree with that. In this story, we get to see Ainley. He's decked out in both his traditional Master costume and also in this black suit, which we don't really see again until John Sim.
But it's fascinating, the image of him on that beach. or on that mountain, that airy and that very
it's stark,
formal-looking business suit looks really good.
Right, and it stands out against that.
It does.
That volcanic, sandy background. Yes, I totally agree with that. It's very stark in contrast, and it stands out. And it makes him look more forceful and imposing. And go ahead.
While we're on that, we're jumping ahead on our agenda, but while we're talking the Master, I loved seeing his chameleon circuit working correctly. The TARDIS, because at first, I will tell you, Charles, I watched this episode, and I also need you to explain to me how the Doctor is, mind controlling the robot from his, wherever he was at.
Right.
I didn't understand that, but I went with it. But when the building falls and the robot / master tries to pick it up, the master, the actual master, is like, "Oh, my TARDIS," and I'm like, "Did I miss the TARDIS?" So I looked up and rewatched, and I'm like, because I pictured the building actually falling on his TARDIS,
right?
And so later in the episode, when he opens the door at that building, I'm like, "Oh, that is the TARDIS."
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. The Master's chameleon circuit actually works. And so, which makes him a much more dangerous threat because his TARDIS can just, before without even realizing it, it just turns up. And so, the Doctor, as opposed to his police box, doesn't really know that he has to discover. Oh, that's the Master's TARDIS. Oh, okay, and can be caught unaware because of that. But one of the things, like I've mentioned before, this was Davison versus Ainley, and it's kind of their last, because it's really their last battle, if you want to use the word, and more of a confrontation, I guess, where they face off, because Ainley's master. I know we haven't covered the story yet, but in Logopolis, Tom Baker's final story, Anthony Ainley's Doctor had just recently regenerated, taking over the Doctor's companion's Nissa's father, Tremas, stealing his body and regenerating himself that way. And he's responsible for the Fourth Doctor's demise at the Pharos Project Station. So when he falls from a great height and then regenerates into Peter Davison's Fifth Doctor. So essentially, these two, this Fifth Doctor and this incarnation of the Master, they've been in this, it's right from the start. They've been facing off, and the Master carries right over into Davison's first story, Castrovalva. And then they encounter one another in Time Flight, and then later again in the Four Doctors, and in this story. And so they've run in several times, and it's definitely these. It just seems like it's definitely one of these classic Doctor Master pairings.
Okay.
So I'm kind of curious what your take is on this Doctor versus this Master.
I love the arrogance of the Master.
Mm-hmm.
Obey me.
Yes, you will obey. I am the Master. You will obey me. Yes, it's very old school.
Yes, and very kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked their interactions together. It was, you could tell they knew each other really well,
mm-hmm.
which you helped explain just there. So I love the fact that the episode begins with a comment. Not the first time you see the Doctor,
mm-hmm.
he's throwing a comment about the Daleks.
Yeah.
Because I thought of you, because you said, "Hey, I'm going to give you an episode that doesn't feature the Daleks for a change of pace." Right. So I love that, but I love him say, "I sometimes think they're going to take over the world," or whatever he said. So that was awesome.
because the story before, Resurrection of the Daleks,
Mm-hmm.
that was one I was considering.
Okay,
but because I know you've had Dalek overload, I restrained. But okay. I want to cover that story at some point.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it is a pretty big story. Because it has Davros and it has the Doctor's companion Tegan leaving.
Okay.
So I do want to cover that.
Okay.
But obviously we can wait because you've had enough Daleks for a while, I'm sure. So
and I think as the Saturday Night Live skit, more cowbell is always better.
Mhm.
More Daleks is always better. Oh, I love it when I make Charles laugh.
Yeah, exactly. The Doctor and the Daleks. You can't have one without the other, I guess.
Absolutely.
All right. So, all right. So we've talked about that. Let's get into Turlough and what I termed as in our show notes as Turlough's secret Civil War origin identity crisis. So, if you're a comic book fan, you probably get a number of those references. But yeah, and that's basically what Turlough has here. Because this episode is essentially, it's Turlough's last story, but it's also his origin story that we only got hinted at when he comes aboard the TARDIS. I know we haven't covered that story either. It's part of the problem of being timey-wimey, we jump around.
Yes.
But when Turlough arrived, when we first meet Turlough, it's in this story, Davison story called Modern Undead.
Okay.
Where he's attending English public school, and one of the professors there is the Brigadier, who's the headmaster essentially there. And so that's kind of how those two meet, because the Doctor's visiting his friend the Brigadier, and shenanigans happen, of course, being Doctor Who, and Turlough ends up getting recruited by this bad guy called the Black Guardian, and they go through this what's called the Black Guardian trilogy of stories. That story, and then two more where the Turlough is essentially being forced by the Black Guardian to try and kill the Doctor. So, which is a very unusual relationship for a companion. And he's always been kind of that like really shady gray area companion. He's not a squeaky clean companion. And we kind of get a little bit of this here where he kind of panics and he's trying to cover up when there's distress signal triggered by that device on Earth that Peri's stepfather finds. This through this archaeological dig or whatever. That signal, it sets off the whole chain of events where we gradually find out that Turlough is this fugitive, not really fugitive, but exiled prisoner from his home planet of Tryon. And we find out when they end up on Sarn, Turlough finds out that, oh, guess what? I got a brother. And, so I've actually have some family. And then they end up having to call Tryon as a result, and then for help in rescuing these people from the planet's destruction. And then we have, Turlough finding out that, oh, guess what? I'm not an exile anymore. I can go back to my home planet and actually have a life with my brother on my home world again. So I know this is your first introduction to Turlough. So what's your kind of first impression with him?
So it was a little confusing, Charles, and that is, how we play it here. We are timey-wimey.
You just roll with it.
We just roll with it. And as this is the second shout-out for Ken Schaefer. Mm-hmm. And Ken and Parker, his son, started at the very beginning of the very first Doctor Who episode, and they watch at least one full episode every Saturday. That's their father and son moment, and they're up to like a Baker. They're up to Baker. Nice. And so it is. And so I believe we are losing a little bit by not watching it in order. So I got mixed feelings about him. He certainly wasn't as irritating as Adric.
Yeah.
Adric, yes. Yeah. But he wasn't like Jamie, who I loved right away. Right. Jamie, you're like, oh, this guy is great. Mm-hmm. We need this guy back.
To be fair, it's kind of hard to top Jamie McCrimmon.
Yes, absolutely. And so it was
kind of like a middle ground.
Yeah,
like you've got like the extremes are Jamie and Adric as far as male companions go, and then Turlough's kind of in the middle.
Yeah, and who was the guy that stayed with Rose and Eccleston that ended up being betrayed them?
Adam Mitchell.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's only in like two stories, Dalek and The Long Game.
So at first I got a little sense of that with him.
That's fair, I think.
And but then I kind of the doctor seemed to like him,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it certainly was interesting to see him jumping ahead when Peri is, I guess, gets a cramp or something. You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah, well,
it,
she's swimming, and I
yes,
think that's what
and,
happens is she gets a
yeah,
cramp and starts
yeah.
drowning.
You know, he goes in to save her, and
But he's
he
like, like Earthlings. Ugh.
yes, but he I liked him. I mean,
Mhm.
like I said, I ended up liking him at the end,
Right.
and it was a little bit this. Oh, I'm a refuge. You know, I'm
Yeah.
a refugee from my world, and now things are going to go back. So it was a cool ending, and by the end, I still don't think he's as cool as Jamie, but that's hard to do.
Right.
He was a pretty decent companion, and I thought he did pretty well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I liked him well enough.
I understand because you're essentially coming in at the end of Turlough's story,
Right.
but just as you're getting the beginning of Perry's story. So this is
Which was
one of those transition episodes
Yeah,
that.
and I like that. I'm glad you picked this one because it was a really interesting
Hmm.
thing. And so yeah, I that's my thoughts on him. I thought a little bit of that, Adam guy or whatever,
Yeah, Adam Mitchell.
but
Yeah.
but certainly not as irritating as some. So not a bad guy.
Right. Yep. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Now, next thing I want to talk about was the wasted potential of Chameleon.
Okay, so
Now, Chameleon, yeah, this has been like for classic Doctor Who fans, it's kind of a minor sore point with Chameleon because he's this kind of clunky robot
right,
that's aboard the TARDIS. And as I talked about earlier, that he shows up and like he's brought aboard the TARDIS in the King's Demons, episode 13 of Davison's run. We don't see him again until episode 19, this story, Planet of Fire. So he's been in the board of the TARDIS, like he was aboard during the Five Doctors 20th anniversary special. He was aboard, like during Warriors of the Deep and The Awakening and Frontios and Remembrance of the Resurrection of the Daleks, somewhere in the TARDIS. He's never mentioned. He's never discussed. It's like he doesn't even exist until like, oh, guess what? I guess we got to write him out of the TARDIS. So hey, guess what? Chameleon's aboard the TARDIS and things are happening, and so and you would think with a character that could shapeshift into other characters, take on other characters' appearances, there would be quite the potential for some really good stories with Chameleon.
so let me get this straight
Yeah.
because I was going to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't understand why he became the stepfather
Right.
and then became the master.
Right.
So I'm like, how is the master doing this?
Yeah.
So what you're telling me is the chameleon, which makes sense with
Yeah.
the name chameleon,
Yeah.
could shapeshift and look other ways.
Right. Yeah. Because when we in King's Demons, he takes on the appearance of King John, and he's this puppet of the master. Well, he
Okay.
breaks the master's control, and the doctor's like, "Well, hey, I guess you could come aboard the TARDIS, even though we won't use you again until you leave." And so essentially, yeah, and he kind of like can be sort of controlled through mental force,
Okay.
which of course the doctor and the master, their brains are kind of a little superior to humans, so they're able to project. But he was getting a vibe off of Peri
Mm-hmm.
when Peri was confronting him. So that's kind of why he kind of took on the appearance of her stepfather.
Okay.
Because if you remember, she had passed out after Turlough rescues her and kind of leaves her on the bed to recover, and she kind of passes out, falls asleep, and then she's kind of having a nightmare or something about her stepfather, and I think Chameleon picks up on that, which is why he takes on his appearance.
Okay.
In that, and then the master, of course, takes control again,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's why he takes on the master's appearance.
So Charles, I almost saved this for my episode rating,
Right.
but I love the fact that the TARDIS has a bedroom.
Right.
Because we don't the modern
Yeah. You
So
don't
you
get to see that
see any
stuff.
of that,
And
and I just
that annoys me because it's like
it
you have this big
annoys a
we have this
great
big
deal.
TARDIS.
Yeah,
Let's see some more rooms. Come on,
and
come on, you cheap BBC. Pony up a couple of rooms already.
now it is funny that it's just this, metal.
Hmm.
I don't know the style of the bed,
Yeah,
but and it's just she gets there and she goes to sleep, pulls up the
yeah,
cover, and
yeah,
it just was like, this is in the TARDIS. This is so funny.
yeah.
Um,
Well, people, the companions, they stayed aboard there.
right.
They actually mentioned it during the 11th Doctor's era, where like
Yeah, bunk.
Amy and Rory are upset because they had bunk beds and they want separate, or like one's bed.
Yeah, and we also joke about,
But we never got to see that bunk
yeah,
bed, did we?
open all the doors to the pool.
Yeah,
River.
right.
Which, by the way, Alex Kingston in person, lovely. Just throwing it
Oh,
out there.
jealous.
I
And I should mention how jealous I am, right? Well, envious is more probably accurate, of you meeting Peter Capaldi at
Yes,
Dallas.
we will share that.
Yeah.
So so I find that odd that because the robot has at least part of a brain, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is,
He can act independently.
yeah. So as an AI,
Hmm.
shout out to person of interest, that,
Well, science fiction.
yeah, but you would have thought that I mean, it isn't like the doctor, I'm going to turn you off and throw you in a closet
Right.
if you ride with him. So that is odd. Yeah, because we had no context, and the only thing I'll end this with, Chameleon is no canine.
No.
Okay,
No, he's not. And I kind of think it
that's
was
what they were shooting for.
I think kind of, yeah, they were shooting with that, with canine, like a canine type robot android character. Wouldn't this be cool? But then they were like, I think part of the problem was that the puppet, essentially, the mannequin, it's because it's essentially like a mannequin that kind of moves around in a very limited fashion through like animatronics,
Okay.
but that it probably broke down a lot. I'm guessing it wasn't, at the time, that they probably didn't have the technology to really use it properly
Right.
like it should. I always thought that it would have been better had they not used like an animatronic, mannequin type thing. If they would have just had an actor with makeup on
Yeah.
as a robot, it would have been a much better character, because then you can, it's an actor, you can go off and do stuff
Right.
and
Absolutely.
not be limited by this, like, thing that breaks down every other scene or whatever, and you
Yeah.
can't use anyway. So like, we've had robotic characters like Data on Star Trek: The Next
Yeah.
Generation, or there's a Crichton, I believe, on Red Dwarf.
Hmm.
So it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. You could have done
Yeah.
something similar, and I think it would have been
Absolutely.
much better for it.
So to throw another bingo,
Hmm.
um, science fiction, number, with the primitive people
Yeah,
and the whole waiting for the chosen one and such.
yeah.
Flashback to what many people believe is one of the worst episodes of Farscape, um, where uh, and Rigel says there's always a sacred text. you know so I was thinking of that, like, because the master doesn't, what do you mean? He immediately goes, they're waiting for a messiah figure, I'm gonna be it. So kind of like Rigel in that one, going, it's the John Crichton, I'm drawing a blank on the episode now, Karen would yell at me,
Yeah.
but yeah, so
I know the episode you're talking about. I
yeah,
can't remember the title myself, but I know the
yeah,
one you're talking about.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, the master is obviously
Yes.
an opportunist, excuse me, and he's going to take advantage of a situation, especially when you've got, like, dopey primitives that don't know any better, and they're just worshiping their god, and they, even though the god is proven to not really exist, it was just, confusion over, like, a guy in a silver spacesuit, and they just made a god around that. So that he's more than willing to use that to his advantage, and does so, of course. And then the doctor has to be tread very carefully. If he notices, he works that religion but he doesn't abuse it, of course, like the master. He's the good guy. He has to play by a more fairer set of rules. And so that's kind of where you get a little bit of contrast between the doctor and the master, I think.
Yeah, very nice.
Okay. All right.
But
Go ahead.
definitely,
Go ahead.
it is a wasted if you're gonna use
Yeah.
if you're gonna have, because look at for Deep Space Nine,
hmm
you could have the shapeshifter and
Yeah, like with when you did that with
yeah,
Odo.
yeah. So
And he, like when you have that kind of character that can become other things, other people, that opens up the storylines. So that's where I feel that Chameleon is totally wasted as a character, as a
right,
companion. Not just because he's not used, but because you could have taken stories in different directions,
yeah,
and they didn't.
hmm
And so it's very frustrating.
yeah,
Especially looking back, going, guys, it was so obvious. Why didn't you do this?
hmm
So, all right, let's move on. I would like to talk next about what Peri did on her summer vacation.
okay. So there are times, Charles,
Mm-hmm.
when I I have a feeling and I don't think of it too long
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to be proven wrong,
Right.
and that's what you're here to do.
Well, that's
But
why I prove everybody wrong,
yeah,
especially myself.
yeah, it proves it appears to be, at least my first impression is, we normally do not see much of the companion's life before the doctor shows up. Now, in the moment I go that, I think yes, we did with Rose, and
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't with Amy. So I mean,
Well, we kind of did.
yeah,
I mean, because
yeah,
like we got to see her as a kid, and then he returns as an adult, and she's doing the stripogram
yes.
stuff, and
But I loved seeing her interaction. At first, I was like, "That's kind of an old boyfriend," but then it's her stepfather.
right.
So, it was a beautiful locale, and I liked seeing
Yeah,
her.
I should mention the yellow cow,
Yeah,
real quick, right, since before, so I don't forget it.
yeah,
They filmed this in Lanzarote, which is this island in the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa,
yeah.
and it was recently used in the story "Kill the Moon," and the Peter Capaldi story. So
Mhm.
they
Oh, okay.
to give it that kind of gritty look, they just put a different filter on it to make it look more like the moon. But yeah, that's
Ah,
Lanzarote as well. So
very nice.
yeah. So
Okay.
I just threw that tidbit out. So
Good. Thank you very much.
yeah. All right. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt
No,
your
no,
train of
no.
thought.
So, I love how they did a great job of setting up that she's kind of college aged.
Right.
She's bored. She's
Mm-hmm.
going to go off to Morocco with guys she had just met.
Right.
As a father gives
Yeah.
me this red flag.
Yeah. It's like no bad
Yeah,
idea. Well, obviously, even Perry's stepfather's like that's a really bad idea,
yes, it is.
and he kind of stiffs her deliberately by trapping her on the boat.
Yeah.
But
Which I thought was genius.
hmm
I mean, and I bought it totally.
yeah.
I mean, I was like, oh, bad news.
Yeah. Yeah.
I forgot.
Why are you helping her with this? Why? And then
Yeah, yeah, it
and,
was. It
and
was
then
great.
yeah, it didn't work out that way.
So so it it sets off perfect,
hmm
and sometimes it doesn't. We kind of have to hand wave. Why is this person wanting to get off in the TARDIS?
Right.
But they do a great job of setting up. I'm bored.
Yep.
I want to see the world.
hmm
I want an adventure.
Right.
And then when this,
Can I come along?
yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I like, and we have talked before. The actress is absolutely beautiful.
Nicola Bryant.
Yeah,
Yes.
I got.
Uh,
She was here in Dallas last year
right.
and got to meet her, and and it's kind of funny, right? Because she's known more as a Colin Baker companion.
Right. Well, obviously, because she only has two Davison stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad you picked this. I loved her charm. I
hmm
loved how smart she is. She looks beautiful.
Yeah. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that you enjoyed seeing her in a bikini.
Yes, I did. I
I-
will admit that. And I think what red-blooded British/American male or female Doctor Who
Right.
fan wouldn't enjoy that.
Right.
You probably didn't notice.
No, not at all. Especially when I'm, not when I'm 14 and no, not at all. Not at all. But no.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just totally zoned out for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. For probably obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So, Peri, she kind of comes off at first as kind of a little bit of a spoiled brat, I think.
Yes.
She's just like she's talking about like you said, she wants to run off with these British guys that she met, and that she's wants like she doesn't really want to earn her way. She wants her stepfather to front her the money
Right.
and stuff so that I can go do this, and she's kind of a little bit selfish about it. But then obviously events take place, and she becomes a little bit more resourceful.
Yes.
She's obviously kind of like overpowered by the master at first, where he kind of he's twisting her arm and forcing her to go places and do things for him, or at least Chameleon is.
And now that you explain to me what's going on,
Right.
really great point where she kicks the master's leg and
Right.
it's metal.
Yes.
Because it's Chameleon looking like the master.
Right. You hear this clunk, and you're like, yeah. Instead of just like him going "ow," it's just her hitting this metal leg. He's not going to feel anything. But she does make a point, like she it's obviously she's sort of a damsel in distress, but she also takes steps to like when she has her moments, she makes her escape, or like she gets she kind of gets one up on the actual master, who's now at a more reduced stature, shall we say, thanks to his little experiments with his tissue compression eliminator.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of gets a little get a few digs in about him, obviously because she's been tormented by him as Chameleon. So she kind of relishes the fact that, oh, you're just this little dude in a box, and has a little fun with that. And there's the scene where she knocks out Chameleon.
Yes.
And so she doesn't just roll over.
No.
And she's not a screamer here. She has screamed in other places, but she does try to be more of a at the time a more modern companion.
And she looked like Ace looks strange with her vest and her jacket. Her jacket.
Yeah.
And Jamie, of course, rocks the kilt.
Right.
But she's in a fairly, except for the whole, maybe it's a little outdated, her tying up the shirt, but when you figure where she's from, where they took her from, it actually seems very modernish. And this was like 1983, right?
Yeah, this was 84, but so basically she's got a tied off shirt and with shorts over her bikini top.
Yeah.
And it's just, which considering she ends up on this very hot volcanic planet, that actually is just like, well, that worked out really well. I mean, it's like obviously a little bit of comfort there. Didn't mention, but Davison's doctor kind of strips down a little bit in this episode, because obviously wearing that big cream coat and his pullover would be a little bit warm in Lanzarote. So so here he's just rocking these very cool question mark suspenders.
Oh, I was gonna bring them up, Charles. I so want those question mark suspenders,
dude. I've been wanting those things forever. So I don't know why the BBC doesn't market those like the Tom Baker scarf. But if anybody has the ability to hook me up with one of those, please let me know, because I'm dying to own those.
And I would I should try to look into this, a local seamstress, and say, okay, here's my white dress shirt. I want red question marks on the collars.
Yes, yeah.
just because they look,
it is a very 80s thing, and this is because John Nathan Turner was so into the idea that the Doctors 5, 6, and 7 have these like question marks all over the place.
But it looks great, and
But I think the suspenders works really cool going against that white shirt and his traditional kind of stripy trousers.
But it also, I think, made him look less stuffy.
Stuffy, yeah, because he's got his sleeves rolled up, and his collar's unbuttoned. So he looks more relaxed.
He does. I think that subconsciously helped me liking him more.
Right.
So good stuff.
He's much more approachable.
Yes, open, so to think. Yes.
Right. Yeah. He's like the casual Fifth Doctor, and I really like that look.
Yeah.
But so I just wanted to mention that real quick.
Good, I'm glad.
And so Peri obviously ends up aboard the TARDIS. He wants to spend it traveling with the Doctor. Doctor's kind of a little resistant at first, but he's like, "Well, okay. I guess I'm fresh out of companions finally after all these companions that I've had." And so come aboard, and then obviously there's that right off the bat. There's a little bit of rockiness with the TARDIS. Where the Doctor's like, "Well, welcome aboard, Peri."
Yeah.
As like, well, it's going to be a bumpy ride, which is a good thing because it makes things interesting. Obviously, if it was dull, or if everything runs smoothly aboard the TARDIS, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting. So,
and I did love that, and it may be stealing one of your lines,
Go ahead.
When she, you don't have to be Albert Einstein to figure out. She took that circuit board, and everything. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Peri is by no means, she's not the smartest companion.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that would probably be Zoe, but of the second Doctor companion. But but she does okay. She's got average intelligence, and every so often she can kind of put one over on the Master. So that's a cool thing. All right, so I'm glad you enjoyed this first introduction to Peri.
Oh yeah, love her, and just awesome.
Yep. All right. So, is there anything else you want to talk about before I get into favorite quotes?
No, I think. So I guess I was reading somewhere that the end of the Master is what started one of the added fuel to the. And I'm going to say wacko theories because there's a lot of wacko theories about Game of Thrones right now.
I don't think this is a wacko theory, though.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty good theory that this is the Master's brother.
Yes.
I'm guessing. Or I mean, that the Master is the Doctor's brother.
Yeah. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Let's get into that a little bit. I'm glad you brought that up. This story was originally intended as a swan song for Anthony Ainley as the Master because his contract with the show was up. So which is why he dies in air quotes in this episode. Now, of course, when he shows back up in the Mark of the Ronnie, which we have covered, there's no explanation about like, hey, weren't you like burned up in flames? How are you still alive and looking like you do? No explanation.
Yeah.
So we just roll with it, apparently.
Of course.
Before as a deliberate tease, during this death scene, the Master has this final line, which ends up being truncated, that he goes, "Won't you even show mercy to your own ... and then it trails off. So, and supposedly it's like he's being killed by the gas just as we're going to find out, like, okay, what is his real connection to the Doctor? So, there's been that speculation that, well, won't you show mercy to your own brother or what have you?
Right.
So, it's been kind of a thing, and there's always been that like kind of, I mean, and even in the story when the Doctor and Peri return the TARDIS after watching the Master get crispy fried in the flames. If you notice, the Doctor kind of he has this kind of a little bit of a melancholy look on his face, and like he's not happy the Master was killed.
No.
And so the question is why, like, well, this was your arch enemy. Why aren't you glad that he's, no more? And it's like, well, maybe it's because they're family, perhaps.
And we've talked often the whole Clark Kent Lex Luthor, Superman Lex Luthor, that I like when there's that relationship between the Master and the Doctor.
Yeah, I would almost compare Batman and the Joker to the Doctor and the Master.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
I think it's a much more personal
Okay.
And like not that Superman and Lex Luthor doesn't get personal at times.
Yeah.
But
But
Batman the Joker is just like it's this blood feud, and they're just linked throughout the end of time together.
Well, and that's why every once in a while they play. There's affection between them, especially like with Missy and the Doctor.
Right.
There seems to be a little more respect and affection for each other, and I think with Tennant's Doctor.
Right.
So that's why I think of more Lex Luthor and Clark, especially with Elliot S. Magin stories,
Right.
versus the normal Batman Joker. So I think it depends on how you play it. But yeah, good stuff.
Okay. All right. So let's get into favorite quotes. Do you have any favorite quotes this episode?
I have a couple.
You mentioned one about the Albert Einstein quote. So
yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm gonna get this wrong because I don't know how to say Peri's full name correctly.
Perpugillium. Perpugillium.
Okay. I love that you must obey me. No, I am the master. So what? I'm Perpugillium Brown, and I can shout as loud as you can.
Yep.
That tells you everything you need to know about her personality. Just perfect.
Yeah, I love the fact that the masters try and be all like, super villainy, like, oh, I'm the master, you will obey me, and she's like, so what?
Yeah.
So big deal. I'm Perpugillium Brown, and I can yell just as loud as you can. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So it's like I don't care. I don't care what you are. You don't scare me, which I really liked about Peri there. So that's good. Yeah, that was actually one of my quotes, but that's okay. I got a couple more.
Okay, great.
So let me get into one here. One of these that I liked was Turlough, when he's kind of describing the worst place in the universe. He's describing this. He goes, "The worst place in the universe, English public school on Earth."
I thought that was a great line. Very, very funny, and I'm sure.
And yeah, that's now if you'd watched Turlough from the beginning, yeah, you would know that he's still bitter about ending up in English public school on Earth at the beginning of his story arc.
But I'm sure that killed in the audience the kids watching that when it first came out, and I think to this day, right?
Yeah.
What else do you got for us?
I got one more quote, and this is kind of Turlough's final line in the story, where he talks to Peri. He's kind of saying goodbye to the Doctor, and he advises Peri. He goes, "Look after him, won't you? He gets in the most terrible trouble sometimes, or he gets in the most terrible trouble."
Yeah, that was great. And then, which I thought was funny, my last line is Roscoe and Ahmadin.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, they were. I can't breathe. My feet are burning. Tamon says Logar is benevolent. Perhaps he's waiting with a cool drink and new shoes. I just love that. Just okay. Maybe he's waiting somewhere for us. So I love this. So yeah.
Yeah, it was because there's a little bit of sarcasm in that comment, I think.
Yes, it was absolutely.
Yeah, so that was good. All right, any other lines, or is that it?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so Jesse, what was your rating for this story?
I really like this one so far. This is definitely a well done story. So I would give it 8 missed flights to Monaco.
Oh, okay. Very good. So we're actually in sync this week.
Ah, very nice.
Which is always nice. So yeah, I give this one 8 out of 10 double triangle symbols, or
Ooh, yes.
The Mesos triangle, if you will. But yeah, so the little symbol on Turlough's arm and also on his brothers, that indicates that they're kind of they're presumably it's the mark of Logar, but no, it's actually something else. So
yeah, it's like their family crest, or
it's more of like an exile mark.
Okay, that's it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Essentially, it's like, because Turlough makes this comment. Well, only special people get these.
Okay.
And he's referring to the fact that they're exiles, they're prisoner exiles.
Okay.
Because we find out that there was like the Civil War.
Yeah.
And whatnot. So, All right, so let's go real quick. I'm going to reverse the polarity.
Yes.
And it's a story I'm not sure you might expect, but hopefully you'll see the comparison. You have any guesses on what story I might be referring to?
No, you always keep me guessing.
Okay, so this time we're going to reverse the polarity to 2008, Series 4.
Okay.
Of the modern Doctor Who era with The Fires of Pompeii.
Ah, okay. I like that.
Yeah, this is the second episode of Series 4 in 2008, written by James Moran. And this is why I compare this story to Planet of Fire. The 10th Doctor and Donna arrive in 79 AD, Pompeii, Volcano Day, the one day before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. So you've already got like a volcano that's about to erupt. Right. As volcanic rumblings begin to intensify around them, the Doctor and his companion are opposed by a religious priest, which is what happens here in Planet of Fire.
Very nice.
And they must face off against an alien menace. Now, it's the Pyro... So there you go. So they're facing off against an alien. So it's the Pyroviles, of course, in the Fires of Pompeii, but the Master on Planet of Fire. Later, after escaping from the heart of the volcano, which is what they do in Planet of Fire, the Doctor and his companion are able to rescue a small group from volcanic devastation.
Ah, very close.
So yeah, I'd say that's
really close. Nice.
So so if you enjoyed Planet of Fire, I definitely recommend checking out Fires of Pompeii or vice versa.
Okay, very cool.
Thank you.
Nice.
And now I believe, Jesse, we got some feedback. It's been a while since we had some feedback on Next Stop Everywhere. So why don't you tell us about that feedback?
I will. We love when we get feedback from you, our listeners, and a Daniel Martinez at Electric Mastro 5 on Twitter said, "Hey guys, just discovered the Next Stop Everywhere podcast. Keep up the fine work."
Yay. Thank you, Daniel.
Yes, very much. And he especially called out in some later tweets how much he loved us talking about the Big Finish audios. And that's kind of nice because, in fact, he mentions he feels like Doctor Who podcasts do not talk about the Big Finish audios or comics or books. And I thought that was a nice thing because we do try to cover a lot of different things. And I will tell you, some of our favorites, my favorite stories you've sent me are Big Finish audios. They have just been lovely.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because, and I kind of mentioned this to Daniel on Twitter, that if you enjoyed those Big Finish audio stories, you might want to pay attention to episode 62 of Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, because next time on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, we're going to be covering Technophobia.
We are.
Which is the first story in the new 10th Doctor audio adventures from Big Finish Productions.
Ooh, nice.
Because somebody ended up getting the set from his supplier, Who North America, and so I've got the 10th Doctor audios, so which of course means that I'll be gladly share with my partner in time.
Yes.
And so that we can talk about them here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast.
Oh, that sounds a lot of fun.
If you're game. Otherwise, we could do another episode entirely.
No. I want to hear that.
But I know you're a Tennant fan, and so I know we've talked a little bit about some classic stuff. So I thought I'd take a little break, and we go through this 10th Doctor trilogy with Donna Noble.
Ooh. That's perfect. I really want to see, because as I've shared, Donna has grown on me more.
Right.
And so that'll be interesting to see them back working.
Yeah. I've already listened to the first story.
Okay.
Technophobia. So I kind of know what we're in for. So I think you might enjoy it. And
very nice.
And I will say that Tennant and Catherine Tate are definitely on form. So.
Perfect. Absolutely.
Yep. So yeah, we're gonna check out Technophobia. So you got some. If you get this and you want to listen to it, Technophobia first before listening to our review of it, you got a little bit of time. You can go to bigfinish.com and download the story, or you can find another source like Who North America, WHONA.com, or some others. Maybe Amazon.com might have it. And hopefully you can get it and enjoy it and review the episode right along with us. So
absolutely, we will be recording in 2 weeks. Next weekend is the 4th of July weekend,
right?
But we will be back on Sunday and hopefully back on a every 2 week schedule. Now we're going to at least try. So
yeah, now that Jesse's back from his world tour,
yes, absolutely,
and. So we're trying to get back on track here. So what better way to do that with these new 10th Doctor audio adventures, which I know there's a lot of 10th Doctor fans out there. So I'm hoping you guys enjoy that.
Absolutely. I also am hoping that we're going to be able to do some of the River Song episodes this summer.
Right. Now I haven't purchased those.
Okay.
So, but I do have a 8th Doctor story which River Song appears.
All right, I'm in.
That we can maybe do that.
Okay, good. All right.
So we'll see. But But from now, we're going to cover Technophobia next week, or in 2 weeks, excuse me.
Yes.
And, so Jesse, where can they reach you?
I can be reached at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. I am on Facebook, Jesse Jackson, in Louisville, Texas.
Right.
And you can hear my fine work currently on Game of Thrones podcast, The Small Council Matters, and of course, Set Lusting Bruce, nominated for a podcast awards.
All right,
which means both the host of this very podcast are nominated podcasters because. Didn't a little something happen to you?
We've been at Fandom Zone Podcast, which I do with our special guest companion, Karen Lindsay. We were nominated for a Parsec Award.
Which is huge. That is amazing.
Yeah, I don't know who nominated us, but thank you for nominating us. And I believe Karen got her submission in. I don't know if I don't think honestly, I don't think we have a chance. But if we do, same things that was said about the Cleveland Cavaliers.
There you go.
Before Game 7, so you never know. So, but we were obviously very honored. And we would love it if we won and got to share that with you guys. So
yeah, absolutely, very nice.
Because obviously we don't have a show without you guys. Same thing here at Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. We don't have a show without you guys. So we really appreciate you. We want you to be a part of the show. So if you'd like to reach us, you can obviously contact us on Next Stop SMG on Twitter, or you can. What's our email address? nextstopeverywhere@gmail.com.
Absolutely. And how can they reach you directly?
They can reach me at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine, or at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram. I've been a little more active on the Instagram lately. So you can check me out there. Or Facebook, of course. And you can contact us at Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast on Facebook as well. Forgot to mention that. And Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus. Shout out to Karen. And my blog of geeky things, Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about all the shows and comic book TV shows, but also about Doctor Who and Next Stop Everywhere. And we'll provide news, and also on the upcoming show Class as news comes out. So
yeah, we're looking forward to that to talk about it. Cool.
Right. Yep.
All right, Charles. I think that's it.
I think that is.
I am going to end us with a very appropriate quote. You can always judge a man by the quality of his enemies.
Nice. And the master is certainly that.
Yes, he is. So, thanks, guys.
We'll talk to you later. Bye.